Hi Cupcakes, Lisa here. Hashtag 78 days, and today my cup runneth over. We're in the Eight of Cups, which is a card that I have thought that I've understood for a very long time. It's a card that immediately, the image in Pixie's deck immediately resonated. And I never felt the need to dig any deeper. To me, this has always been the card of the renunciate, the card of the seeker who makes a decision, perhaps a very painful decision, to turn his or her back on what the world counts as satisfaction, to cross the river of samsara, to take herself onto the path of the pilgrim, staff in hand, lonely, only the moonlight to guide her, making her way across the rugged and unfamiliar terrain up the holy mountain. This is just, resonated with me so deeply. I mean, from a very young age, like I identified with that, the life of the holy hermit, of the nun, of the monk. I mean, I was fascinated by stories of monastics from like a young age. Anyone who knows me would just think it's hysterical that I would want to be a nun, because I seem to be someone who like wants to be out there in the world, but it's a very powerful drive. And so this card, it's like, duh, no, I get it. Because that meaning has been so crystal clear to me, it's a card that I wanted for this 78 days work to really push myself to explore by seeing the resonance with Crowley's system. It's my, as I've said in other videos, it's my profound kind of, I was going to say my conviction, but it's more like a kind of principle of my practice with tarot. There really is only one tarot. We may want to talk about different systems. We may want to talk about the Tote or Thoth system, Crowley system versus the Mousset versus the Rider-Waite-Smith. But these are all idiolects. These are all dialects, that these different decks that have emerged from a single source, right? From the mid 15th century Italian decks that we have in the versions that have remained in the Visconti Sforza, or even a weird deck like the Solabusca. But there's a limited number of ancestors, and it boils down to what was going on in Italy in the mid 15th century. So there's one tarot. I believe that it's a point of my practice. It's a principle of the work I do with tarot. But that said, readings for some of these cards really differ across different practitioners and different systems. And the Eight of Cups is a great example of that. The resonance of this kind of moving on, letting go of what no longer satisfies, whether we see that as a spiritual movement or as just a kind of sadder but wiser perhaps, or maturing, or just it's time to let go. There's a positive cast to that. It's hard to interpret this card as anything other than spiritual growth and maturity of a certain kind. Like, I'm letting go of what no longer serves. In Crowley's deck, however, the Eight of Cups has the key word indolence, which means laziness, but actually a kind of laziness, but it has a certain connotation. And as Crowley talks about it in the Book of Tote, the connotation here is of what it means to lose heart. In the Tabula Mundi deck, this is I think this is such a cool depiction of this card. The kind of subtitle for this in the book, I'm just going to look it up in I have this online in the little Fool's Dog app. Eight of Cups, Lord of Indolence, abandoned success. So the notion, it's not like a laziness, like sloth exactly, that comes from, it's the torpor that sets in when somehow something that that was on a path toward fruition and completion, we just lose heart, we just let go. And Crowley describes it really interestingly. He says, the Eight of Cups is called Indolence. This card is the very apex of unpleasantness. It is ruled by the planet Saturn. Time, sorrow have descended upon pleasure, and there is no strength in the element of water which can react against it. This card is not exactly the morning after the night before, but it is very nearly that. The difference is that the night before has not happened. So that, like, this is a morning after card, but not a morning after where there actually was a night before. Okay, which is an interesting idea. Like, you know, this sort of sense of regret, that kind of like, hung over, just, you know, what comes after. If you think about in Crowley's deck, the seven is debauch. So it's a kind of losing oneself in false pleasure, and just like, I mean, it's just a disgusting image, right? Like this kind of snotty, phlegmy, green, slimy ooze coming out of the cups, where we're used to the cups in Crowley's imagery being like, you know, lotus blossoms. So after that debauch, the morning after is the eight, indolence, that kind of hungover state. But he says, you know, the night before didn't happen. This card represents a party for which all preparations have been made, but the host has forgotten to invite the guests, or the caterers have not delivered the good cheer. There is this difference, though, that it is in some way or other the host's own fault. The party that he planned was just a little bit above his capacity. Perhaps he lost heart at the last moment. That idea of losing heart, like, I just couldn't carry through with it. It's like, it's abandoned effort. So what's the link between this card and, where did it go? And the Eight of Cups in Pixie's deck. Hold on, I've got everything buried under everything else. You know, if this indolence, this sense of like hungover laziness, is about a kind of abandoned effort, that's on me. It's like there's something in me that I tried something that was beyond me, like, you know, that I had these dreams about what I was going to do, and then I'm just like, ugh, I just don't do it. I just, it's this kind of like, this torpor, this like fatigue, that's not because I've exerted myself too much, but because somehow I've like set myself forward on a deluded path. Like, at the heart of my effort is delusion. What's the relationship to this? This too is about abandonment. This is about abandoned effort, abandoned success. This too is about abandonment, but it's the disillusionment isn't I'm deluded and now I've lost heart. It's I have lost heart, lost faith in the world out there. So the difference between these two interpretations of the eight is really something of the order of, you know, is this about my errors in myself that lead me into this indolence, this sort of hung-over torpor, or is it my disillusionment in the outside world? So Crowley's deck puts the weight on the self. Pixie's deck puts the weight on the world. Pixie's deck gives us a sense of movement forward. Crowley's deck gives a sense of being completely stuck, mired, in this place. It seems to me like they're describing the same way in which effort gets abandoned, or the same world of effort being abandoned, but like one is the shadow and the other is the light. It's like the Four of Discs, although inverted. In the Four of Discs, or the Four of Pentacles, which I talked about when it was that card in 78 Days, and I was looking at the Urban Tarot, which is a tote system deck. I talked about the ways in which, I think it was the Four of Discs, that's my recollection, I talked about the ways in which it must have been. Stay on track, Lisa. I talked about the ways in which the Crowley deck, the Crowley system gave us the light, whereas the Pixie's deck gave us the shadow. So it's that kind of way in which I see these three systems, Marseille, Tote, and Rider-Waite-Smith, as intertwined. It might be that one is more shadowy and one is more in the light. And that's why it's so fabulous to study all these systems at once and to cross-reference them, because working together, we get the full system of tarot, the one tarot that binds them all, right? Coming back to this 8, I love what happens in the Tabula Mundi, where the artist quotes in the book Samuel Taylor Coleridge's Rime of the Ancient Mariner, and that's what the book quotes it, and the image also sort of is a citation of that poem, that 19th century poem. Okay, she writes, "The Rime of the Ancient Mariner is a lengthy poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge about supernatural dangers and punishments. The mariner and his crew anger the spirits by killing an albatross that had led them away from peril. They are sent into uncharted and overly calm waters. Day after day, we stuck, or breath nor motion, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, and nor a drop to drink." That idea of dying of thirst in the middle of water, that idea of moving forward but the waters are still and you're going nowhere. Indolence in the Crowley deck, whether it's in the Tabula Mundi or in the Tote deck itself, is that kind of standstill. It's a standstill where, again, and this is all about what the cups are, it's a standstill where the true value, abundance, virtue of the world is negated in some way, where the present and its gift to us is negated in some way. So in the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, they kill this albatross. The albatross has saved them, but they kill it, right? They don't get the preciousness of that bird. They don't get their indebtedness to it. It's that turning away from the gift. Think back to the Four of Cups in the hand offering the cup. It's that turning away from the gift of this life that takes us into this world of indolence, that takes us into this place of that torpor, of that hungover state, where we've been unable to keep our efforts moving forward because our efforts are not grounded in the true value of this life. So in the Pixie deck, that becomes a positive spiritual movement forward to ground ourselves in a better way. And in the Crowley deck, that is just our inability to go anywhere at all. So the invitation here, I think, the invitation, again, I keep coming back to the same point with this suit. The invitation here is to take up what has been offered to us in this life, to recognize the way in which we are only dying of thirst in the middle of water because we don't know how to drink and how to be filled by this nourishment. Okay, I think that's all I've got. Yeah. So may we find nourishment in our lives, you know? May we find that true grounding and that true pleasure, that enduring pleasure of a life lived connected to this moment and this richness of the present moment. Yeah. Hey, sounds good, doesn't it? May you all be very well. As always, I thank you so much for joining me, and I thank you for all the nourishment you bring to the world. Take care.